Time. Time, time, time. Is there enough of it? Is there too much of it? How do you deal with it? And what does that have to do with cruising anyway? Hi, I'm Nika Waters, and welcome to the Boat Galley podcast. I'm getting a little philosophical today, thinking about the difference in time and what it means to me when I'm cruising.
Slow down, slow down.
Today's episode of the Boat Galley podcast is sponsored by Infiniti, the most trusted name in woven vinyl flooring in the marine industry. Since 2008, Infiniti has offered boat owners premier flooring options proven to withstand even the most demanding environments. Each of their products is equipped with UV-stable, fade resistance, and antimicrobial technology, giving them both durability and style that can't be matched. Thinking about kicking carpet to the curb? Make the switch to Infiniti and see the difference true luxury makes. Visit infinitilwv.com. That's INFINITYLWV.com and use the coupon code PODCAST for 50% off samples. Today's podcast is a little different than some. It's not a how-to. It's not a practical tip. It's more, hopefully, to give you an idea of what something very basic and how different something really basic is when you're cruising as opposed to when you're on land. The idea for this podcast came after I'd spent a week in Vermont with my family. Jeremy and B and I drove up from Virginia to southern Vermont to stay with my parents. And we helped B drive around and look at two of the colleges that were top on their list as they were trying to decide where they were going to go. Actually, I guess we went to 3 different colleges in that week. One down in Maryland, one in Bennington, Vermont, and one in Skidmore, one in Saratoga Springs, New York. My parents are in southern Vermont in Rupert, so it made it pretty easy to drive up to their house via the school in Baltimore, and then we hit the other ones along the way. So we hopped in the car really, really early on Sunday morning and drove to Baltimore, where there was an accepted students day I guess we were there for about 4 or 5 hours. And then we hopped right in the car from Baltimore and drove to Bennington, where B was spending the night at Bennington College for the night. Finished dropping B off, drove the 45 minutes to my parents' house. And then on Monday, I drove down from Rupert to Bennington to pick B up and back to Rupert. Tuesday, I went back down to Bennington again with a colleague from Charlottesville whose son is actually looking at the same college that our child was. It also gave me a chance to check out Bennington, where I had never actually really spent any time. Wednesday morning, that same week, Mom and Dad and I got up at 5 a.m. to drive up to the lake to Averill for the day. That's about a 4-hour drive each direction. We got home, back to Rupert, at 9 o'clock that night. My math is pretty terrible, but I have a feeling we spent more time on the road than we spent at the house, although we did get a couple things done. Thursday morning, I got up and spent 3 hours in the car each way to drive to meet Jan Alexander, who's one of my admin team members on Women Who Sail. We've never met each other in person, and she was in New York State helping her parents as they get ready to move into an assisted living facility. The boat was in the South Pacific. Her husband was on the boat in the South Pacific, and Jan had flown back to help her parents as they packed up a house that they'd lived in for 50 years. So she got a bit of a needed break. I drove down to meet her. We had a fabulous lunch. I think we spent easily 3 hours at lunch. And that was Thursday. And then on Friday, Jeremy and B and I left the house at 6:30 in the morning, headed to Saratoga Springs for the last college of the week. We left that school at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon into a snowstorm, and 10 hours later, we got home to Charlottesville. And as I look back at that week of spring break, which I know many people don't get, but as a teacher, that was one of the perks, is that, yes, I get a spring break, get to do lots of things in it. And I try to think about why that week seemed so unbelievably short. Because I did a lot. We went up to Vermont, and I wanted to have my child see these colleges, and I wanted to go with them to those colleges. But I didn't get a whole lot done during that week. I didn't get in the things really that I wanted to get done, other than those very important family kinds of things. Well, except that when we were up in Vermont, we did rip out the rest of the carpet that was in the lake house, which I really did want to get done. So I was very happy to have done that. I think that driving every day didn't help matters a whole lot. And yes, I totally agree and admit I chose those trips in the car. I could have chosen not to drive to Bennington. I could have chosen not to drive to Averill. I could have chosen not to go down and see Jan. But I think part of it is that spring break feels like it should be filled with time to do anything and everything I want to do. That's what vacation sort of feels like it should be filled with. We can leave the shoulds out of the conversation for right now, but one of the things that I think is amazing about cruising is that time is a little bit more malleable. That doesn't mean that you can disregard things like weather and tides and currents. And you can't sometimes disregard the state of your pantry and the food that you have on board. But in general, your sense of time is perhaps a little bit more cushioned. You don't leave at 6:30 in the morning because you have to be somewhere at 7:30 in the morning, or you don't leave at 6 in the morning as we did on Sunday driving to Baltimore because we needed to be in Baltimore by 9, and we would not have had to, if we were cruising, we wouldn't have had to leave Baltimore at 3 in the afternoon, missing out on some kind of fun other things at that college because we needed to be in Bennington by 8 o'clock that night. You might be choosing the passages that you're making, kind of like these road trips. But if you're choosing to do a whole lot in a week, it's not because the week is really all that you have. And so cruising involves a different version of choice. And for me, a big part of that choice is choosing time. And I'm really, really looking forward to choosing my time. I'll look forward to seeing you out there. Thank you for listening to the Boat Galley podcast today. We aim to answer your cruising questions, so ask us anything. And who knows, you might hear it on a podcast sometime. If you enjoy what you're hearing from us, please make sure you share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe and tune in twice a week, every week, for the Boat Galley podcast. Cruising advice and answers in your pocket. Bye for now.